All right, what's going on, everybody? This is Greg Fowler coming at you live for the next episode of Real Estate Titans. Super excited about this one. Our very special guest and featured Titan for today, Kendall Bonner. Kendall, thanks so much for taking the time. It's an absolute honor to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Greg. I'm excited to be here. This is amazing, and I'm very, very humbled. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And just for everybody out there, I mean, this is so great. I mean, learning from the best of the best, and again, what I consider real estate titans. So really gathering inspiration, tools, tactics, just from so many beautiful minds that are out there industry-wide. So I can't wait to just dive in, Kendall, and really share your story and your knowledge base with everybody out there. So I guess without further ado, all the way from, Tampa, Florida, which is amazing. So how's the weather out there, Kendall? I mean, is it 80s, 90s?
It's been really nice. This morning I woke up, it was 66 degrees. So that's a little cool for us. I don't know, it's sweater weather as far as we're concerned.
Right. I was going to say, that's fantastic. In Colorado, as we kind of pre-discussed before we went live, it's been pretty chilly, to say the least. We got a bunch of snow, but I was recently out in Orlando, as we discussed, and I remember getting off the plane, it was 91 degrees, and I thought, well, that's a big contrast for sure. But I love Florida. Huge fan. So I guess let's just dive into the series of questions, Kendall, to get everybody to know you a little bit better. So I guess we'll start with, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I've lived in Florida now for about 16, 17 years.
Okay.
I'm originally born and raised in California.
Oh.
I'm a lawyer in addition to being a real estate broker. And so a lot of people wonder, how do you go from being a lawyer to a real estate agent and then broker? And, my mom told me when I was younger, she said, JD, MD, PhD, pick one. And I never actually wanted to be a lawyer, but I went to law school, and there my joke was, I'm here to get my MRS degree. And I was totally just kidding, but I met my husband in law school. Yeah. And he asked me while we were still in school, he said, would you move to Florida with me? And I said, not as your girlfriend. And so he asked me to marry him.
Love it.
And we got married on Saturday, graduated law school on Sunday. And then on Tuesday, we're in the car driving to Tampa.
Unreal.
So, took the bar exam, cried my whole first summer because I was 24 years old when I moved here. And graduated from law school. I was a baby. And so passed the bar. And my husband said, you got to go get a job. So I did. And I worked. And then about, I don't know, we'll say 6 years in, I decided to get my real estate license. And then ultimately didn't do it until 2011. And then in 2011, I said, it's time to either do this or not do it. Because I thought, like most people who get into real estate, I was naive. And I thought I could just help a couple of people a year and still practice law. But once I joined my first real estate company, I fell in love after going to the trainings that they had to offer. And the rest is history. Became a real estate agent, loved it, and started listing homes right away. And that 2011 downturn market where, there was lots of people needing help in real estate. And being a lawyer, I was in a unique position to help them do that.
Wow. Incredible. And to me, that's just, it's so interesting how people get involved in the business and what the pathway is and to where you are today and accomplishing what you've accomplished, Kendall. It's so amazing. So I want everybody to get to know you a little bit deeper on this side. And this is where the next question comes into play, which I think is really fantastic. It's, what's your why? What drives you? What motivates you, gets you out of bed every morning and excited to do what you do to the level that you do it at?
That's a great question. And, I'm constantly challenging people to think about I call it why power, right? And I learned this from a book I read, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy.
Okay.
And he said, people often talk about this concept of willpower, he said, but that's really not meaningful compared to your why power. It's the reason why you do what you do. And so I'm obsessed with this concept, right? So I think my why, it's not that it changes all the time, but it gets deeper and stronger year after year as I put in the efforts that I do to do what I do. And I think, as I was thinking about it recently, one of the biggest things that I think about is, legacy.
Love it.
That is one of my whys.
Okay.
I believe that it is my responsibility to leave a legacy for my children, not just in tangible things or, and stuff, but also just in, their character and who they're supposed to be as an adult, or who they can be, right, as an adult, and just kind of what the standard of their, just, oh, gosh, how do I even explain it? It's just who are they supposed to be? What is the character, their integrity, all of those things? Where do they want to go in their life? And so I just want them to know they can do anything that they choose to do if they are passionate about it. So
Wow, well said.
that's part of what I'm after.
Okay.
And a good legacy.
I think that, when it comes down to leaving that legacy for everybody around us, our family, our clients, and the communities that you service, I think that that's extremely important. And it's not self-serving. It's not about us. It's about everyone else growing and having that impact in a positive. I think that there's no greater why, Kendall. I think that's fantastic. All the way through. So I do want to go into the next question. And this is actually a crowd pleaser for the audience who really tunes in to get to know what the Titans are doing or what they have done to scale and grow their business. So this particular question, whether they're new or seasoned professionals out there, the huge takeaways, if you could look back at your career thus far and pick or choose one or two things that you added to your business that took it from one level to the next, what's that look like for you?
I think there are two things that I did that I think had a huge impact. And one was I had decided to have courage. Honestly, it's as simple as that. So many times we get, opportunities, and you can choose to take advantage of those opportunities and make the most of them, or you can choose to be afraid and not take that leap of faith, right? Because the future is unknown, right? So I think that was the number one thing. I did not actually plan or want to be a real estate broker. In fact, when I was a real estate agent, I used to say I had no intention of owning my own company. And when the opportunity came, in fact, I own a couple of Remaxes, and Remax called me and asked me if I wanted to buy a franchise. And the first time they called, I thought it was a prank, and I did not return the call. I was like, who am I? Awesome. Why would you?
Wait a minute.
I was like, they're not calling me. Who am I? I've been in the business 3 years. But they called again, and I took the meeting, and it opened up a whole new world to me that has blessed me so tremendously to this day. I mean, the relationships that I've gained from this network has been, amazing, and as well as all the opportunities. But had I not had the courage to open my own office and do something that I said I was never going to do, I would not be here today. Then the second thing that I did was I have an overachieving work ethic.
Okay.
As evidenced by, I have two hashtags that pretty much represent my brand, which are improve your hustle and level up. So it's all about growth mindset, learning, building. And I think that hunger for growth and for education and for self-improvement has been phenomenal in helping me get to where I am today, because I just crave it. So I'm constantly looking for the opportunities to improve my hustle or level up.
I think that's huge, ways to look at it. And, first and foremost to addressing, main company, Remax, phenomenal company all the way through and through. And we've had so many amazing professionals on the show from those franchises directly, but the opportunity for you to own and operate your own, I mean, that's a huge honor and obviously huge success that way. Would you give any advice out there for anybody who maybe is in that particular process or going through maybe some do's and don'ts or what you wish you would have done during that time or anything along those lines? I know this is kind of off the cuff here.
Yeah, no problem. So I talk to lots of people constantly thinking about opening other businesses, because I actually own a mortgage business as well.
Okay.
And again, courage is what it's all about. And so I get called on a lot for people thinking about making those moves. And I always try to be honest with them. It's never, there's no rose-colored glass that I could give you to look through things. Like, you need to remove those, right?
Sure.
It's never going to be exactly how you anticipated it to be. It's never going to be as easy as you anticipated it to be. You're never going to have planned enough to do it. You just have to get out of analysis paralysis and take a leap of faith. at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you believe you can do it and you're willing to put in the work to do it, then do it.
Wow.
There's great ROI in having courage, and there's great ROI in having faith in something bigger than you that's behind you, blessing your footsteps and your opportunities. So there's a great benefit to all of that. So
I love that.
I choose to believe in the benefits and the return on investment as opposed to all the bad things that could happen.
Yes.
And
it's not easy to do, but I think that mindset is crucially important, as you know, and every top producer in any field, it's really about, like you said, getting out of the analysis paralysis kind of scenario and just take that leap of faith. There's only so much research, so many conversations that you can have. It's either right or it's not. And you got to take that chance. There's always risk,
Yeah. And I would say this one last point is, don't be afraid of failure, because in failure there's the lesson. That's when, I think people mess up. You can fail, and that can be a great thing because there's so many lessons in that. And as long as you pull the lessons out of it, you'll never regret the failure. It's when you fail to get the lesson that you really suffer, I think. So.
Oh my gosh, we're just getting warmed up, everybody, and all these nuggets of information. Kendall, this is amazing so far. I absolutely love these takeaways, action items all the way through and through for everybody out there. I do want to shift gears on the tricky part of this particular series and interview, but it is a deeper window into the professional who happens to be on the show. And this is the challenge question. So I always lead into it with the Titans that we all have challenges in our lives. No one's exempt, whether it's in the past, we're dealing with it now, or it's in the future. We're all going to have hard times, struggles, whether it's personal challenges or professional challenges. So if you're comfortable sharing a challenge with the audience that you dealt with, that you overcome and learn from, what's that look like for you?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is something that was really big for me, and it affected me both personally and professionally. Okay. And that was, I grew up in a single parent household. Okay. My parents divorced when I was 4.5, and my mother was a doctor. She was an MD, and she was an overachiever. And so she was everything that my brothers and I, aspired to be when we grew up. And in 2009, my mother had to come live with me because she was diagnosed with an illness, and she had dementia. And my mom was only about 51 at the time, so very, very young. Wow. And so to see someone be such an overachiever in everything that they did, she wrote a book, she owned her own businesses, she was an entrepreneur, she was a mentor and a leader in her community and her medical profession in Los Angeles. She went to medical school at a time where people were telling her be a nurse, and she wanted to be a doctor. Wow. And so, she's a very wonderful role model. And so from 2009 until she passed away in 2015, I was primarily responsible for taking care of her. And it was watching my mother deteriorate in such a fashion. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. It was very similar to watching an adult become an infant again. She was mute. She, couldn't even tell me if it itched, if she was hungry, if she was comfortable, uncomfortable. We lost that ability for her to speak. She lost the ability to walk. She really just needed help with all acts and functions of daily living. Okay. And so what happened was I had someone helping me take care of her, and I had been praying that I didn't want my mom. I knew at some point my mother would pass, and I was praying and asking that she wouldn't die alone. And I said, Lord, so I had moved her out of my home. She had lived with me. I moved her out. And then I said, Lord, I want to move her back. Help me figure this out. So without going into a long story, he arranged a scenario where my mother was in the hospital for a week. And it was during that time I learned how to take care of her so I could bring her home. I learned how to change her adult diapers. I learned how to bathe her in the bed while she was immobile. I learned how to feed her, how to medicate her. And I learned all of that during that experience. And so that happened in July of 2015. She came home with me, and I had two of my children home with me at the time and my husband.
Hmm.
And we got additional help, but
Okay.
I was already running my Remaxes at this time, or at least the first one. And I was in the middle of acquiring a second one. I was negotiating to acquire the second franchise. And for 3 months, I was in and out of the office. And so how that affected me professionally was I had to rely on my team and my staff in the office to run the office while I was absent most of that time. And that was a real blessing to me to have such great leadership within my company, and the kindness of my agents and their forgiveness of me, my lack of presence there, you know. And they went through that with me. And that experience has blessed me so much to this day, because I'm grateful that God provided an opportunity for me to take care of my mother when she needed me most.
Right.
And a really quick miracle part to this story is my mom, we did not know, we thought she had frontal temporal dementia.
Okay.
So I wanted to submit her brain to Harvard to be studied, because, you know, we want to find a cure to Alzheimer's and to these other forms of dementia. And so with that, we couldn't leave her alone ever. And so when she passed, we needed to extract her brain very quickly so that it could be sent off to be studied. And so that was very stressful. So there's like no sleep those last few weeks of her life. And one night I was sharing a shift with a family friend, and she stayed up all night with my mom. I was sleeping and I had a dream. My mom's youngest sister, my beloved Auntie Stacy, she had passed away a couple of years before my mom from brain cancer.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. And so she came to me in my dream, and I was so excited when I saw her. I was in tears. I was bawling because I just hadn't, you know, I missed her so much. My aunt was one of my favorite people on the planet. And I'm crying in my dream, and she's coming to me and she puts her arms around me and she's saying, "It's time. It's time." And I don't understand at first what she's saying. I'm just saying, okay, okay. And then it dawns on me, oh, mommy, it's time. And she said, "You need to let her go." And I'm crying and my dream, and I'm saying, okay, but I'm so happy to see my aunt. Is a very emotional dream.
Yeah.
And they wake me up from that dream, and the family friend says to me, "It's time." And so I wake up out of bed, I go downstairs, and I get to hold my mother's hand as she takes her last breath.
Wow.
I could not have been more blessed in that miracle moment, because it answered all my prayers. I got that opportunity to say goodbye to her before she left this earth. So needless to say, even when you know something like that is coming, it's never easy. You know, people, we lose people. One of the lessons I learned was we lose people unexpectedly and tragically. And then we also lose people and we know it's coming and it's still tragic. And so that was a huge lesson for me to understand that, because I thought I would behave and react differently, but it was still pretty emotional. But I'm very grateful for it. And I know that my mother would be proud of my brothers and I for the legacy that we're carrying on in her name, you know, and how we treat one another and how we treat others. So,
wow. I mean, Kendall, that's first of all, thanks for sharing that, because it's not easy to do that, you know, and show that vulnerable piece. But I think that there's nothing greater than family. And as you mentioned, you know, your mother and the example, you know, that she set and that you and your family is living up to. I mean, what an amazing role model. And I love that. You had mentioned looking at it from the standpoint is that you never know when. It's always going to be tragic, and it's either sometimes it's fast and sometimes it's not. But to me, in the takeaways, and hopefully everybody out there who's watching or listening to this, is just spend time with your loved ones and really make sure that what you're doing is allowing you to make a difference in the community and the impacts and have fulfillment creatively. But you got to understand that nothing's more important than family and what you're doing with that legacy. So I think that's a beautiful story. And I really appreciate you sharing that, Kendall, because it's not easy.
Thank you. And thank you for acknowledging that last piece too, because that was one of the biggest lessons I took away from my mom's passing, because my mom was 60. She had just turned 60 by the time she
Wow.
passed.
Ugh, too
And
young.
what that told me was, all of us that are waiting until we retire, we're waiting for this or waiting for that to live our lives. Stop waiting. Live now. None of us are promised tomorrow. Take the gifts, talents, opportunities you have today and live them, embrace them, level them up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Just take them
Right.
to the next level. So they've made certain decisions nowadays where I'm not waiting till I'm 60, 65, 75 to travel or own other properties or build other businesses and do the things that I would like to do. I will do them as soon as I can.
Wow.
Every single one of them.
Love it. Huge information, everybody. So Kendall, I appreciate it. I know everybody out there is watching or listening does as well. I really want to shift gears to a softer question.
Sure.
So we got through the hard stuff, but I want to go through, this is actually one of my favorites. It's the travel back in time question. So if you could travel back in time, and this is any time period, any age range, whether it was a year ago or was it 20 years ago, or talking to little Kendall, what would you say to your younger self, whether it's funny, professional, business related? What would you say?
I would tell myself that perfection is not a requirement of success.
Wow.
Honestly, I have been so, my mom used to tell me when I was little, be the creme de la creme. She would say stuff like, don't be me, be better than me. There was a lot of pressure she would put on me to be better and be more. And I shouldn't say pressure, but she would encourage me. I'll say that. She was very encouraging when it came to that stuff. And so I would say, and so because of that, I created some obsession personally or internally with perfection.
Okay.
And I think that I realize now that it's not a requirement of success. I can be successful without being perfect. And that success is defined by me, right? Everyone's, it's so, internal how we each define success. And I don't have to be perfect to achieve my goals.
Well said. And it sounds funny, right? I mean, you think perfection, it's not there, but there's so many professionals who strive for that perfect, business, so that perfect example, that perfect life. And I think that, when it comes down to it, perfection is a slight form of illusion. I mean, it's really hard for true perfection, but you can strive for it. Yeah. I get that. It's never gonna be 100%. And so certain people stop themselves from taking next steps because of perfection or lack thereof. But I think that if you have that in the back of your head, hey, I want to do the best I can with the knowledge and the people that are around me now, and that's my perfection, and leave it alone. But I think that's great advice. Just keep pushing forward, right?
Yeah, well, I agree. To me, I say perfection's impossible because if you achieve perfection, there's no other level to go to. And I'm all about leveling up. So it's like, there's no ceiling.
Yes. Love it.
There can't be a ceiling if I, truly aspire to improve my hustle and level up. So
that's perfect. I absolutely love that. Love that all the way through and through. So I want to go on this particular vein, which I think is great. And this is actually another crowd pleaser too. This is the feeding of the mind question. So a lot of the viewers, subscribers, whether you're watching or listening, they love to know what the Titans are doing to feed their minds, how they're growing intellectually. So I always lead into it with books you're reading or have read, podcasts you're listening to, influencers or coaches on social media. Kendall, how are you feeding your mind?
So I've got a couple of different sources, which I believe in diversifying my knowledge and my resources. Yeah. So one of the things that I would say that's had a huge influence on me is mastermind groups. So within the RE/MAX network, I invited and began a series of mastermind groups with some of the top broker owners in the entire RE/MAX network. And that mastermind group evolved into not just masterminding on topics related to broker owners, but also evolved into a book club as well. And we I asked my coach at the time for some business books to read in 2019.
Okay.
And so I've been reading, or the goal is to read, and I actually do read a book a month, a business book a month.
That's great.
Sometimes on the list, sometimes off the list.
Sure.
But some of my favorite books this year are The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham.
Oh, cool.
That is a great book. It was written in 2017, very relevant today for for CEOs and business owners like myself. And so, it's very relevant today, especially with the shift in what the consumer is looking for as they try to find service providers, right?
Okay.
So, getting us to think about what our clients want, what we think they want versus what they actually want. He asks some really great questions and asks us to do some deep work, focused thinking on the answers to those questions and problem solving. So that's probably my number one book this year. Okay. My number two favorite book that I would recommend to people is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Also with that, Grit by Angela Duckworth.
Okay.
When you hit walls and you're like, how do I persevere through them? Grit is a great example of what you need to push through the hills and valleys of our business. Okay. So, and then my favorite podcast right now that I'm listening to is the Social Media Examiner. It's social media marketing. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
So I am all about learning how to market from people that are not real estate professionals.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
Right?
That's fantastic.
So Social Media Marketing with Michael Stelzner is a fantastic podcast that I would also encourage your listeners to listen to along with yours, because you have a fabulous podcast as well.
Oh, thank you.
Of course, absolutely. You bring on amazing guests. But that podcast also really talks about marketing. Okay. And I think that is a weakness that real estate professionals have right now in our industry, because we're so focused on marketing listings, we forget to market ourselves.
Oh, well said.
And I think that is an area we can improve on. And so I've been really grateful for that podcast right now. And it's been teaching me quite a bit about how to learn more about edgy marketing and story selling, as opposed to some of the traditional ways that we have done business in the past.
Oh, I love that. And you're looking at it from so many different perspectives. And again, that diversity with learning and growing. And I would echo with you 110%. I know people that are watching or listening and other Titans that have been on the series, marketing yourself is one of the lacking traits inside real estate right now. And I agree with that. It's about the listings, about the client, but not necessarily about us. And I think that you got to let people know who you are and what you're about and why you do it. We work with who we know, like, and trust. And Absolutely. There's only so much reach you have. And if you've been in the same market for 25 plus years, there's a certain amount of people that are going to know you, but there's still more people out there who don't than do. So I agree with you 110%. So I'm going to have that on my list as far as podcasts are concerned, because it's always good to get different knowledge. Now, I do want to touch on a few other things when it comes to your podcast and your book. So we kind of talked about this ahead of time, but IYH is your podcast. So can you talk about your podcast a little bit?
Oh, thank you for that. Yes. So I have a podcast called Improve Your Hustle.
Love it.
I got inspired to do that over the last year, just wanting a medium to share some of the things that I've learned. I love to go and digest knowledge, and I go out and study and learn and internalize these different concepts. And then I like to test them, implement them, practice them, and then teach you how to also do it as well. So a lot of my podcasts will be talking to, other people in the industry, as well as really giving knowledge and information and value, of course, for free. That just is like, hey, these are nuggets. These are practical things that you can do to impact your business today. So that's that kind of stuff is really important to me. So I love it.
Okay, awesome. And we are going to have links for everybody out there in the comments below. Again, not so you can just feed your mind, very similar to Kendall, but also that you can follow her podcast, subscribe, and go through all those different channels through social media as well. Follow along. Now, you have a book as well, and it's on Amazon and e-reads, things like that. There's so many places. So would you tell everybody a little bit about your book?
Yeah, so I actually have a copy, so you can see it.
Yes, love it.
Yes. So a couple of agents and I wrote a book called So You Think You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. And the reason for this was because, as you get into this business, like everyone, all of your listeners are aware,
Sure.
everyone thinks it's the easy business and it's
Right.
easy money, and it's not.
Furthest from right there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so we wanted to write, give someone an introduction into the world of real estate from the perspective of, hey, we're in it. It's not as easy as it looks. We're not trying to talk you out of it, but we just want to kind of educate you on the pieces you're probably missing, as far as how this business works. So that was a lot of fun to do. And I wrote my own, as a part of the book, I have a broker's corner.
Love
so
it.
I add the piece of what it's like to be a broker of a real estate company. And also my joke is to be broker than your agents.
So great.
Well, I mean, for most brokerages, that is true. Not
Right.
all, but for many, there's a lot, there's like 86,000 brokerages in the country. So trust me, they're not all, unfortunately for those brokers, they're not all, that's why some of them still sell.
Right.
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 Just be perfectly honest.
Sure.
So, but a lot of people get into both parts of the business a little naive. I won't deny, myself included.
Sure.
But I'm grateful for every lesson I've learned as a result. And I'm not here to tell you, no, don't do it. Just, educate yourself.
Love it. And again, be aware of what you're doing and surround yourself, but you can learn from others, other great minds like Kendall's. And again, Kendall, this has been absolutely incredible, chock full of really, really great information. And I feel like I'm getting to know you, which is fantastic for everybody out there who knows and loves and respects you. There's a whole new audience out there that can love and get to know you as well. So I want to wrap everything up with a final question. And this one ends up being the quote or mantra that sums you up as a person, as a professional. What's that look like for you, Kendall?
So this is super easy for me. Okay. I'll tell it to you after I tell you the story behind it real quick. So a couple years back, I was a broker owner, and I had struggled. I had experienced a loss in my business that I wasn't expecting. It was really tough, and it's made me doubt, what I was doing, why I was doing this. Was it really worth it? Is this what I really want? And I read that book that I mentioned earlier, Grit by Angela Duckworth.
Okay.
And that book was a game changer for me. So mentally. And so what happened was, after having read the book and experiencing this challenge, I was again praying, and I said, Lord, so I'm an acronym person. I love acronyms. I was an English major in college.
Love it.
And so alliteration, acronyms, all of that stuff is kind of my jam.
Yeah.
And so I was asking the Lord, this was like the birth of one of my first big acronyms. I said, I need an acronym for grit, because grit is something I really need right now. And within seconds, I had this. And so my hashtag from that era, because I change every couple of years, is Got Grit. And grit stands for greatness as a result of intentional tenacity.
Wow.
So that is my mantra. It's in my emails. It kind of follows me everywhere I go. But greatness is a result of intentional tenacity. So if I desire to be great, I have to continue to be intentionally tenacious. And so do you. Not just you, but our audience, right? You want that, you got to have some grit.
No, but you're right. And Kendall, that sums you up so beautifully. And again, everybody out there who already knows, loves, and respects you, they know that you live that every day and represent that in the communities, to the clients that you service and the industry as a whole through real estate. So I'm just honored that you took the time to be on the show. And this is so great for everybody out there. So I want to thank you again. You are an official real estate titan. So thank you so much, Kendall. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And everybody
Thank you very much.
Everybody out there, thank you so much for your time and attention, your love and support as always. If you like what we're doing here at the Real Estate Titans, please don't forget to like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and have a listen on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Live every Tuesday and Friday afternoon, a different Titan, a different location. We'll catch everybody on the next live episode of Real Estate Titans. Take care.
Bye.
See ya.